As some of you will see, we are running a bit late, but it's not a problem. I will make it quick. We've seen finance in the media in the last years after the 2008 crash, but a topic that came up in the news in the last 2 years is worth mentioning too. The topic is called refugees. There's a lot of people talking, debating about how to deal with the issue that refugees pose in our society. But there's some other people who actually set out to do something about it. We have one of these people here. Her name is Paula Schwarz, and she's a half German, half Greek serial entrepreneur who set out to found something called Startupboat, which is a mobile incubator which tries to solve some of the issues that we have when integrating refugees and to build something that actually helps them succeed in their new environment. So I'm very happy to welcome Paula here. I hope she's ready or around the corner. Yeah, I see her feet there. So we are all ready and set. Paula, come up on stage.
Hi guys, thank you for having me. I really appreciate being in my hometown as well. So, as you mentioned, I'm half Greek and half German, and the German part is actually from Munich. So, yeah, I'm here to tell you about the Startup Boat, which actually began as a mobile think tank for innovative solutions to the refugee crisis. We say mass migration now because we don't want to refer to the situation as only a crisis, because it's also a very big opportunity that we just have to, yeah, basically get involved with for the future. So I'm gonna start off with telling you a little bit about my background, because it's a very personal story. My father is an investor and my mother is very much in politics and in culture. So the Greek side of my family, so my mother's side, is working for the European Union. Most of them are translators. And back home on the kitchen table, we were always discussing around the financial sustainability of social projects, basically. And this is where I got my first motivation from, to actually think about the sustainability of social projects and also how you can scale them further. Which I will touch a little bit upon later. This is important because this is my friend Jamal. Jamal lives at the border between Greece and Turkey. It's an island called Samos. It's approximately 1,000 meters from Turkey. It takes 7 hours to swim. And I spent my whole childhood summer time there. So still today I actually moved to this island at a later point. But Jamal and I, we met in 2014, and this was a time when I was coding a lot. I have a background in coding and in finance, and I realized quite early on that I like to build in a mobile way, and this is why Jamal and I, whenever I would visit the island, we would sit at his apartment together with his friends, and he would show me exactly what they've been building, and we would also do things like look into social media. So the user experience was quite different, and that for me was the first contact that I had actually with the topic of migration. Jamal is from Afghanistan. Back then already we had a lot of people coming from Iraq, and after this, I actually set out to start working in Africa because I realized that I like working in this quite mobile mode, and I like to work with people who have a different perspective from my own, and to actually see if the product makes sense or not. And I'm very lucky to say that we actually also won this bus. So here you can see we went from Tanzania to Uganda to Rwanda to Kenya and the Congo. And back then, we were focusing a lot on building business models. And I started off as a mentor for this bus, and then I joined a startup, which was a carpooling company that was then exited to BlaBlaCar. And then I took a step back for the summertime and said, okay, this went very well and I'm very thankful, still very close to the team. And I want to go home and relax now and have an easy summer with my family and with my friends. And what I didn't expect, of course, is that the political situation in Greece would get worse. So there was 1 week where 50,000 people canceled their trips to Greece. And at the same time, we had a massive inflow of people coming from Syria. And I had, at that point, already started building this website called the Startupboat. I bought the domain for €6. And the reason why I did that is because I wanted to bring people to Greece to work together on solutions, right, not business models that could potentially be financially sustainable. And yeah, so the concept was ready. I had built it in Africa already, and it was just this push of a button that then led to what happened afterwards, which I'm going to explain to you. So here again, you can see that Samos is actually the closest island to Turkey. It's 1,000 meters, and yeah, this was the beginning of my very interesting summer of 2015 only. When I pushed that button, within a week, we had the top 1% of McKinsey on the first startup boat, which was an actual boat. We had Facebook join us, we had different investors, we had Jamal, my friend from Samos. We also had a couple of consultants, design thinkers, because the idea is really to get people out of their usual playing field, since scientists think in research papers, then you have politicians who think in laws, and then you have entrepreneurs who think in tech tools maybe often and business models, and everyone is trying to build something, but people don't really talk offline anymore, also without regarding their usual rules too much. And this was the idea of the boat. So that was a very, very interesting experience, because the first tool that we built actually had up until now around 2 million users. It was an information platform for people who come from Turkey to Greece and then enter Europe, because you have to understand many people think they're in Spain, they don't know how to do the currency exchange between the lira and the euro, and we translated this website to Pashto, to Farsi and to Arabic. We're now building a mobile version for it, and we did things such as to learn where the Facebook groups are that people use. There's different groups that have millions of users at the moment, and we learned a lot from this first experience. And this is why we decided to keep going with these boat trips. So we get one problem statement from an NGO in the beginning, and then based on this problem statement, we invite very specific people to come on the journey with us. And we are privately funded. Thank God it has been okay to find amazing philanthropists around the world who want to support this project. And the solutions that we've built is, for example, First Contact that I just referred to. Then we have Marhakar, which is it's a delivery app for first aid items that currently works on the Greek islands. So it's basically the person usually who's the first to interact with people when they come on the boats is the doctor, and then the doctor gets into the car to go and look for blankets or for firewood, and we thought that this is not possible. So we found an online solution. It's a white label solution on Stack Overflow that we used. I don't know how many people know a little bit about using predefined code, but basically it's like Uber, and you can request items and they're brought to you. The drivers register as volunteers, so they carry their own costs, and after 3 weeks this became an own NGO. And now we also have a co-working space called the Migration Hub in Berlin, there's one in Amsterdam, there's one in Athens, and what this does is that it unites different people who work on social projects around migration. So it's very important to note that this is not for newcomers who want to become entrepreneurs, but it's more that we see we needed an offline connecting point for people to actually, exchange ideas and get to know one another. This is also a very interesting thing because we have a database now of around 4,000 projects that deal with migration worldwide. We're building an API for that, so people can actually also access the data if they contact my colleague who runs this. And just to give you an idea of how mobile this movement is, I've never met this colleague before. We speak 3 times a day. She's a very dear friend. She's based in France and she's a single mom. She has a lot of time on her hands and she's financially also okay, but she was able to raise money for the database. And so, yeah, we coordinate together. For example, Mahakar is coordinated with people who sit in Malaysia, partly because they're in a different time zone, and they really actually, can monitor if there's a request coming in and what's happening with that request when other people in Europe are sleeping. Just to give you an idea of the value that a person can bring who's in an apartment who otherwise doesn't really have very many things to do. So again here I just try to explain a little bit how the setup is. Artists are also very interesting to work with. We're very close to the people at Burning Man. They have this crowd called Burners Without Borders who actually look into ecosystems and then they go in, they try to map, which is something that people who work with the UN also do a lot, and we communicate with them a lot, but they're not as open with the possibilities that they have to at least request specific things. So yeah, this is just to show you that the numbers are still picking up, and it's a phenomenon, mass migration, that will stick around. There is a lot of movement happening in Africa. And to speak a little bit about the most recent trends, personally I find it very, very interesting that the website of the Canadian Immigration Service also collapsed. And what we've seen is that a lot of people have been contacting us who want to get involved also in the building of tools, who are willing to move and to work with people who they've never met before, who are completely out of their comfort zone. And so it's really this mobile vibe that's coming up. And what we try to communicate to everyone who comes in is that, first of all, you need to have mutual respect. So you need to be clear about the fact that you're trying to create value for all parties that are involved. You never discriminate based on gender, age, cultural background, financial background, and religion, of course. And you believe in failure because failure is important to grow, and that's basically it. One important fact is also that we try to work without ego, which is again the value of community. With politicians, sometimes that can be challenging, but we're all learning because we believe in one another, and we think that community is about growing together and also forgiving things that have happened in the past and having an open discussion about a way forward. So these are moments when we were building. This was on Lesbos when we had the 14 boats coming in an hour, and we developed a lot of tools there. This is me in the very beginning, and this is just to show you that we also then reach out to people like you. This is why I'm here, to say, yes, we are building on the ground, and we have amazing partners, and we're very lucky to have those teams, but it's important to speak about what's happening in other regions. It's not just about integration to Germany. There was this thing called Europe, and Europe needs a new spirit, a new vibe of community, and countries such as Italy and Greece are in a position where they also can need your support, and you can actually offer it because you have so many abilities. You're entrepreneurs, and we're in a moment where not so many people know what to do, and they're looking for answers, and you guys are brilliant minds, and it's okay to recommend or come up with a solution that might not be implemented, because at least you give a new spirit and a new vibe. And also what I would like to suggest is to work together with people, listen to people who are outside of your comfort zone. So everyone is in their bubble at the moment, and everyone is building these amazing tech tools also for newcomers or for societies that are affected. But go out, speak offline more, try to implement, try to see who you're building it for. And it's also a very wonderful and rewarding thing. And you will make a lot of friends who you will stay in contact with, even though you're away from them. So here again, our mission is to develop sustainable solutions for challenges that are related to migration. And to make others see migration as an opportunity rather than a challenge. So what's important to understand is that these are also a lot of consumers who have needs that have not been identified yet, and many of them want to become entrepreneurs. Some of them also, of course, just want a job. I mean, we live in a pluralist society, so I think different options are possible, of course. But it's a wonderful thing if you listen to a person, and this person who has just lost his or her life, they start to dream again. And I think that's what it's about at the moment, to give people hope, to understand that this topic of entrepreneurship is not just one that's about businesses and about the growth of a product or how large the market is, but it's also about a person who can potentially get his or her life back. And then it's okay to maybe fail with that dream, because maybe you don't have the prerequisites to be such a good entrepreneur in that moment, but then you can be so in the next moment. And this is what we try to do a lot with people. So because I was a little bit frustrated with this whole topic of integration, I stepped out of the co-working space, and I went back to Samos now in the last 3 months, and started mapping the ecosystem there myself with the community, and we've started employing people who work in the camp and around the camp, and we have a co-working space now for people who work around migration topics, and this is actually a museum that was started by my mother that is now empty for the summertime. And what happened afterwards, just to make you understand what's possible, is that some guys from Cisco called me and they said, look, we're working around this awesome tool, and Cisco and Startupboat have worked together already in the development of tools. So we provide advisors, we provide knowledge when it comes to the situation on the ground. And they said, hey, we have this refugee first response center, and we would like to donate it. It translates healthcare advice through consultants and doctors who are basically positioned around the world. And the idea is that if a doctor is in the container and he doesn't really know what to do with the patient, he doesn't know in which language the patient speaks, then he can get online, he can get immediate support from the other doctors. They called up and said, we would like to donate this container. And then I said, well, okay, we will need a long time to get the permission for that, to bring it into the camp. And then they just sent it off. And I was consulting the German government in Indonesia at the time. This was around 3 weeks ago only, because also governments are very interested in this outside perspective. So I was in Indonesia, they called and they said, well, we want to donate it, we sent it off already. And then I actually got back to the island, and I was running around like a crazy person for a day saying there will be a medical container that's awesome and it's going to come. And then people in the camp said, there's a crazy person running around with red hair saying that there's going to be a container here tomorrow. And then the container came. So after that, everyone freaked out in a very positive way. And now the container is fully functional. We're very happy about that. And then the CEO of Cisco actually flew in and said, this is awesome. This is awesome. I also think it's a wonderful thing to have a campus now. And I said to him, well, I would like to provide coding classes to train trainers who can become network administrators, because there are no network administrators on the Greek islands. You always have to go to the mainland, and a lot of people leave. And this certificate costs 2,000 euro. And then he said, well, okay, we can try and make you a Cisco certified networking academy, and we can train the first trainers to have courses there. And then I said, well, that's interesting, but I don't want to differentiate between locals and newcomers. I want this to be open for everyone, because at the moment we need a new community spirit and we need new opportunities for all. And then he said, we can do that. And now, the day after tomorrow, we have the first information session for the first students. So we have a class of around 35 people now who will potentially, if they stay in this 3-month-long course, have something to do over the winter months. We can give them a job. They can go and train other people on the islands. And this is thanks to the help of a very ambitious and awesome partner that we have called Cisco. And they also started going out to the different refugee camps together with us to implement Wi-Fi. So there's a lot of possibilities. And what I'm trying to say with this story is that you can be creative and you can offer solutions. And the thing is that this creativity is wonderful, but if you don't know the situation yourself, it only goes so far. And I'm not asking every one of you guys to come and visit us in Greece. Of course, you're very welcome to. I'm just asking to step out and meet people and communicate, first of all, because technology is something that can provide a lot of possibilities. But what we see at the moment, also with the work of Startupboat, is that you know, a lot of people say there's innovation constantly happening at the upper level. So we're talking about self-driving cars and airlines to the moon and automation, but really there's no contact with people who really need basic things. And of course, it all starts with the access to the internet. But for example, something would be remote healthcare services to identify, you know, if you have to go to a doctor or not. That's why we're funded by Biomedical now, to also find innovators who are developing interesting tools around healthcare. Or it's psychological support for men who are newcomers, to understand if they're traumatized or not. That's very important. So we have a couple of tools that we're working on at the moment. We have a growing set of partners, which is very nice. For example, this container, we saw that it should have wheels, and now Deutsche Bahn came in and said, okay, we can provide a bus, so we can do a mobile clinic. And we are trying to build a best case example on the island of Samos to show that together with the locals and with the newcomers and with the international community, we are seeing this as a moment where things can change. And we also have things like digital banks happening at the moment. You know, it's exploding. A lot of new customers are newcomers. And in Greece, you have the capital controls for a year now. So it's really interesting what possibilities you can provide through technology that sort of offer improved solutions to what is in place now. And this whole movement of the startup boat began on a boat, but it's really a group of people who sometimes they meet on those boat sessions, sometimes they get into working with tools a little bit later on, but it's really a community that steps up for a certain set of values. And I would like to welcome you all, if you're up for it, to check out the website, look a little bit into what we're doing, and then I'm very happy to connect you with a team that might be interesting for you to work with. So that was it from my part. This is one team that we're working on, working together with in Berlin. This is Kuhn, who's with Tengelmann Ventures. He's very active. Then we have some people who code with the Ready School, who are also backed by Axel Springer. So it's interesting, the set of partners that you have, because everyone wants to do something. And the vibe in the beginning is the most important thing. It's the user experience at the moment that's missing. It's not the technology. We have enough tools, we have a lot of things that are being developed, but it's really also about the vibe that, that needs to change at the moment to make the situation more friendly for everyone. So thanks a lot for listening, and I'm happy to hear from you whenever you want to reach out.